And we're back. We're looking at 9-2 day 2 using square roots again to solve quadratic equations. This time we're going to see a lot more with parentheses and how we use those. So remember, the whole goal here is to undo your order of operations, or like your PEMDAS, your please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or GEMS for short, grouping, exponents, multiplication, division, and subtraction, addition. So because remember, adding and subtracting are kind of done at the same level, multiplying and dividing are kind of done at the same level. So in GEMS, it's just a shortcut. But any parentheses or any exponents or grouping or exponents are done last. So as you can see, here we have right away, we've got a more complex looking equation. Sorry, I just had to grab my notes. So we can't distribute an exponent. That's not how that works. We're undoing our grouping symbols. So we can't distribute the x or the squared term. So our goal first would be to get rid of it. So what can undo? Remember, that's the big goal here. We need to undo the exponent. So we're going to square root it. And if we square root one side, we have to square root the other side. So we've already talked. Remember, when we square root, you have two possible answers. You have the possible answer of 7 or -7. There are two ways to get 49. And so what we're going to do here, what we're going to see is this basically gives us or yields two equations. We have x plus 5 equals 7, or we have x plus 5 equals -7. So that's the whole goal with undoing. So now, a little bit more than we did the other day, we are now going to simplify or finish the rest of this equation. So we're going to undo our plus 5 in both equations and find our solution. So just because I kind of ran out of space a little bit here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to switch this up just a teeny bit because I wrote way too big on that first line. And so we can get rid of our 5's. So 7 minus 5 gives me 2. Or we can get rid of our 5's here, and -7 minus 5 gives me -12. So we have two possible answers, 2 and -12 for our solution. And so again, if we were to plug that in, just to kind of get a sense here, if I did 2 plus 5 squared, 2 plus 5 is 7, and 7 squared makes 49. Yes, that works. If I had done, instead of 2, if I had plugged in the -12. If I did -12 plus 5 squared, so -12 plus 5 is -7, and if I square a negative, it turns it into a positive 49. So sure enough, it does work. You can always check your solution by plugging it in. So now here we have some more complicated, there's more things going on we need to undo. Again, we are not going to distribute. This is not that kind of problem. Undo, we don't distribute. Okay, so how do we undo this? Well, we can't do the exponents first. Remember, we want to do our grouping symbols last. I'm going to write PEMDAS like this because adding and subtracting are the first thing we have to get rid of. Well, the only subtracting that we see is inside the parentheses, and that's the last thing we do, not the first thing. So we need to undo. So is there any multiplying or dividing that we could undo? And yes, there is some multiplying by 2 in the front. So we're going to undo that by dividing. And so that leaves us then with x minus 2 squared equals 9. So then, can we undo the exponent? And yes, we can. We can undo that x squared, or that square on the parenthesis, and that will cancel it out then. So we had x minus 2, and we have two possible solutions. We have 9. That can be a 3 or a -3. So we're going to write two equations. X minus 2 equals 3, or x minus 2 equals -3. So two possible solutions for this problem. And so then, can we solve from there? Yes, we can add our 2 in the first equation. So I have 3 plus 2 is 5. Or I can add my 2 in the second equation so that x is by itself, and x would equal -1. So we have two possible answers, x equals 5, comma, -1. On the Delta Math assignment for today, you're going to be using, you're going to be getting two solutions like you see here, and you're going to be using a comma to separate them. So if you have to type in a second answer, you don't put them in parentheses, you don't do anything, you type in your 5, and then you just hit a comma, and it'll automatically generate a second box for you to put your second answer. So no spaces or anything else is needed. All right, so on our third problem here, undoing. Again, we want to look at that addition and subtraction first. We have some addition and subtraction outside of the parentheses. So it's almost like we put our blinders onto the parentheses. Don't look at the parentheses. Look at what's outside of the parentheses. So we're going to undo that subtraction first. So I have y minus 8 squared in parentheses, and then my 4 plus 5 gives me 9. And so now I need to undo my parentheses, my exponent. So I need to undo the square. And so that's going to tell me to square root. And so then I have y minus 8 equals, and I have 9. So 9, remember, is square root of 9 is 3 or negative 3. So I'm going to write two equations. I have y minus 8 equals 3 or y minus 8 equals negative 3. And so now I'm going to solve. So if I add 8, 3 plus 8, I get 11. And so that's one possible solution. Or I'm going to add 8 to my negative 3, and I'm going to get 5. So two possible answers, 11 or 5. Okay. And so then, I mean, it's just more of these examples just so you can see them, how they're written, what we do, undoing, grouping symbols, trying to move everything out of the way. So here, it's written the other way around, but that's okay. I'm going to undo my multiplication. So I'm going to undo that multiplying by 3. And so 42 divided by 3 is going to give me 14. And now when I look at this, when I drop that 3 away, notice there is not an exponent on these parentheses. So I don't even need the parentheses anymore. The other three problems we had, when we undid, or when we took care of that dividing, we still had parentheses with an exponent. So like here, we still had the x squared, or the parentheses squared. Here, we do not have any exponents, so we do not need to keep the parentheses. So we can just write this as, let me try that again, as x squared plus 5. It's very different looking than the other ones because of where the square is. So you got to kind of keep your eye on that. What's the prize? Where's the square? And so now we're undoing. Now we do have some adding and subtracting that can be undone before dealing with the exponent. So now we get 9 again equals x squared, and we are going to now get rid of the x squared, get rid of the exponent of 2, and we'll square root to do that. So we get 3, and of course there's two possible answers. Negative 3 is the other answer. So just so you can see how different it looks, I wanted to throw one of those in there for you. So then, let's see here, I got two more, and then we're all done. These are, like I said, these are pretty short problems here. So here we can see undoing. There's a lot more to the math. Undoing our addition and subtraction first. We have a subtraction of 37, so we're going to undo that by adding 37. So I have 3 parentheses x minus 2 squared. So my squared term is outside of the parenthesis. So I've got to deal with the parenthesis. I got to get rid of the exponent before I can deal with that minus 2. So then I need to get rid of the multiplication that's in front. So I'm undoing from the bottom to the top. I'm undoing my addition and subtraction that I had. Then I'm doing my multiplication and division. And then undoing my exponent. So 57 divided by 3 gives me 19. And so now I need to square root. And so the square root of 19, well, that's actually something we can't do. Okay, so by square rooting both sides, I've got x minus 2 equals, and I'm going to leave this in its exact form. I'm not going to make a decimal here. So I'm going to leave this as square root of 19. But remember, we have two possible solutions. We have x minus 2 equals positive square root of 19, and we have x minus 2 equals negative square root of 19. So we're going to do this. It looks kind of weird, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anybody. So then I'm going to write plus 2. Now, technically I could write square root of 19 plus 2. But conventional math, the way we write things, we don't say x, oops, we don't say x3, we say 3x, right? So we don't say square root and then plus something. We say something plus the square root. So the traditional way we write math is that we put a whole number in front, and then anything that would be an irrational number or a variable would go in the back. So technically the correct way to write this would be 2 plus the square root of 19. Whole numbers first, irrational or non-regular numbers go second. That's the conventional way we write math. So there's our first possible answer, 2 plus the square root of 19. That is the exact solution without using any decimal approximations. So when we come over here to the other one, I'm going to say plus 2, and so then x is by itself. So I'm going to just write my 2 in front, and then this 19 is just going to come down. I'm going to keep the sign minus square root of 19. So that's how we write that in conventional math format. So I don't say negative 19 plus 2 or negative square root of 19 plus 2. I say 2 minus square root of 19 so that the whole number is in the front of the solution. All right, one more here, real quick. Undoing. We undo addition and subtraction first. So I'm going to undo that plus 3 with a subtraction sign. So I have 4 parenthesis x squared minus 5, close the parenthesis, equals 4. And then I'm going to undo my multiplication and division. So I'm going to undo my 4. So I'm going to have, now here again, notice the x squared, the exponent is on the x. It's not on the group. So when I bring down that parenthesis or the numbers inside the parenthesis, there isn't an exponent at the end of the 5. I don't have a parenthesis like in the previous problem. My exponent was outside of the parenthesis. In this problem, I do not have the exponent outside of the parentheses, so it's different, and so we do different things. I still have to do my division. I haven't done that yet. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So how would I solve this? Well, I'm undoing my order of operations. I did undo addition, and then I undid multiplication. So I was working through there, but I don't do my exponent yet because I still have subtraction here where there are not parentheses. The groups are not controlled by the exponent. So in most of these problems, the group had the exponent around the outside of it, so you can't distribute into that. Here I don't have a group with an exponent anymore, so now I just get rid of my 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I get x squared equals 6. And now I can square root to get rid of my exponent. There's no longer a group, and that's cool, but I still had to get rid of my exponent. So I have square root of 6. And remember, there's 2 possible answers, so I would also have negative square root of 6. And there's nothing else to do on that problem, so that one is done. And that's really all we got there. Just so there were some 6 quick examples of how we work through those, how we undo the group format, and what we have to look for special, and how they might look similar but different at the same time. So homework assignment is on Delta Math, and so go ahead and get started on that. I'll post this on the Delta Math assignment as well, so you can use this to help you out. And good luck.